While the world admired the armored Mi-24, the aircraft called the flying tank, the most important and most endangered helicopter in Afghanistan was far less glamorous, the unarmored Mi-8, the true Soviet workhorse. In 1985, the average Mi-8 flew more than 400 missions a year, yet these machines suffered the bulk of the Soviet Union's 333 helicopter losses. The Army's rescue doctrine demanded that not a single wounded soldier be left behind, so Mi-8 crews were forced into missions no transport helicopter was designed to survive. How did dependence on this uncelebrated aircraft become a fatal paradox for the Soviet war effort? Soviet planners faced a country where mountains cut off entire provinces and roads dissolved into ambush zones. Helicopters became the only answer. In January 1980, the 40th Army fielded 110 helicopters, nearly all of them Mi-8s. By May 1988, when the withdrawal began, the fleet had swelled to 331 aircraft, still dominated by the same model. The Mi-8 was not a specialty aircraft or a rare asset. It was everywhere. Regiments like the 50th, 292nd, 280th, 181st, and 335th spread out across key bases, Kabul, Jalalabad, Kandahar, Kunduz, forming a web that reached into every corner of the conflict. The numbers alone told the story. Soviet helicopters outnumbered fixed-wing attack jets and fighter bombers 2-1. On paper, this was a force built for reach and flexibility, able to move troops, supplies, and wounded wherever roads failed. In reality, it meant the Mi-8 was exposed on every front, flying every kind of mission, in every kind of weather, against every threat the insurgency could muster. For every armored gunship in the headlines, there were dozens of Mi-8s grinding through the air, keeping the Soviet war machine in motion. The order was absolute. Not a single wounded, shell-shocked, or dead soldier would be left behind in Afghanistan. Every Mi-8 crew knew what that meant. Search and rescue missions made up 10% of all sorties, thousands of flights into valleys already marked by wreckage and gunfire. For pilots like Captain Yuri Shatilov, the medevac runs left a deeper mark than any supply drop or troop lift. He once described circling above a smoking convoy, watching tracer rounds arc up from the tree line as he waited for the signal to land. The radio crackled with the voices of ground medics calling for urgent extraction. Shatilov's logbook for 1985 showed nearly 50 medevac sorties in a single month, each one a race against bleeding and time. Enemy gunners learned to recognize the Red Cross on Mi-8 doors, targeting them first. The doctrine did not waver. Men were loaded on stretchers, sometimes under fire so close it chipped the paint. The helicopter's cabin, meant for cargo, became a flying emergency ward, blood pooling on the metal floor, medics working by flashlight as the rotors beat overhead. The promise to bring everyone home, alive or dead, drove pilots and gunners to push beyond fear. But every rescue mission exposed them again, tying the fate of the wounded to the fate of those sent to save them. The cost of the order was measured not only in lives recovered, but in the mounting toll on the crews themselves. Mi-8 helicopters entered Afghanistan with little more than their transport fittings and a handful of door-mounted machine guns. Within months, enemy ground fire forced a new reality. Crews and engineers began bolting 57mm rocket pods to the fuselage, improvising weapons where none had been intended. These field modifications turned the Mi-8 from a flying truck into a makeshift gunship, carrying as many as 192 rockets on external racks. Pintle-mounted machine guns appeared on side doors and cargo bay hatches. Grenade launchers sometimes blocked exits, but the need for firepower outweighed the inconvenience. the threat on the ground kept evolving. By 1980, Mujahideen fighters were using SA-7 Grail Man portable air defense systems, shoulder-fired missiles capable of tracking helicopters from below. The response was immediate. Soviet doctrine ordered all Mi-8 crews to fly nap of the earth, hugging the contours of valleys and ridges, skimming just meters above the ground. The goal was to stay beneath the missile's effective engagement zone, but the risks multiplied. Pilots had to judge distances by eye, weaving between trees, rocks, and power lines with overloaded machines. These tactics increased the danger of mechanical failure and pilot error. The Mi-8's 5-blade rotor, overburdened with rockets and gear, sometimes struck the tail assembly during violent evasive maneuvers. Crews who had trained for steady transport flights now faced a daily gauntlet of low-altitude flying under fire, with every landing and takeoff a gamble. Field modifications and new tactics bought survival at a price. The margin for error shrank, and the aircraft, never designed for this kind of war, became both shield and target on every sortie. Every sortie pushed the Mi-8 further from its original design. High-altitude missions in Afghanistan demanded performance at the edge of what the airframe could give. The helicopter's published hover ceiling reached 18,000 feet, but that number meant little when the cabin was packed with troops, rockets, or wounded. Engines strained against the thin mountain air, and overloaded gearboxes ran hot hour after hour. Maintenance logs from regiments stationed at Kabul and Kandahar filled with reports of overheating, persistent vibration, and metal shavings in the oil, signs of machines being worked past their limits. The pace of operations left little time for proper repairs. Mechanics scavenged parts wherever they could, swapping gearboxes between airframes just to keep enough helicopters flying. A chief mechanic from the 292nd Regiment once described the smell of burnt transmission fluid hanging in the hangars, a constant reminder that every landing might be the last for that machine. The relentless daily grind, 5, sometimes 6 missions per day, often 8 hours in the air, meant airframes aged in months, not years. Even the rugged Mi-8 could not escape the mathematics of fatigue. The cost of adaptation was measured in worn-out engines, cracked gearboxes, and a growing list of helicopters that never returned to base. On May 17, 1982, the valley around Rukka became a proving ground for helicopters never meant to lead assaults. Soviet command identified the village as a fortified Mujahideen stronghold, bristling with bunkers and interlocking fields of fire. Instead of waiting for armored gunships, mate crews received orders for a combing operation, an aerial push straight into the teeth of resistance. The helicopters swept in low, doors open, gunners braced behind machine guns, while infantry prepared to leap from the cabin into contested ground. For hours, Emit's ferried troops delivered suppressive rocket fire and circled back for wounded, all under direct enemy fire. What began as a mission of transport became a front-line attack, with every crew forced into the role of assault trooper. The Rukka assault revealed how necessity had turned a utility helicopter into a weapon, and how the line between support and combat had vanished in the mountains of Afghanistan. On January 19, 1989, one of the final losses, 5 more were killed. Each incident is a line in the war's account book, paid with lives and machines. Today, transport helicopters still fly into wars where mission creep turns necessity into exposure. The Mi-8's legacy is a warning. When the indispensable become expendable, the cost is always human.